Hello and welcome to the first official episode of the Final Phase podcast. One of the main goals of this podcast was to provide you with compelling bits of info you probably cannot find anywhere else. It's always interesting to hear how a gaming community evolves in newly released games, for example, Playerunknown's Battlegrounds, and how one can create his own career path during that rapid development. Before we begin, since the podcast is available on a lot of different platforms, make sure you visit sprEEEzy.com and listen to it on your favorite app. So our today's guest is Avnqr, a PUBG commentator and the Godfather of the European PUBG Esports scene. Well, maybe I just made up that last part, but I think it's true in many ways. If you ever watch PUBG LAN events, you've probably seen Avnqr on the analyst desk, but what you may not know about him is that he's also one of the people behind many successful communities and projects in PUBG, most notably Faceit nowadays. How you doing, Avnqr?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I don't know if a Godfather is the truthful way of saying it. I think that's mostly you. But yeah, it's I've been here for some time and I've come a long way since the start, indeed.
Yes, that is one of the reasons why you're here in the first episode.
I'm happy to be your first.
All right. Let's start with your gaming background. Could you tell us where you came from? Did you come from an FPS background? And what games did you play in general?
Well, the first real game I started playing on my own PC after I got my own PC from like when I really started playing. Obviously, I played console, Sega. I'm one of the older guys, so I tried that as well. I had all the PlayStation generations, but when I really started playing, my first PC was obviously a shooter. I played a game called Vietcong, it came out a little bit earlier than Call of Duty, which I then moved on to. It was also very much in kind of the same way a first-person shooter where you aim down your sights and your movement is kind of important. I played Call of Duty quite a bit and played a lot of clan-based, which was what back in the day was kind of the popular thing to do competitive. I've always been kind of like a very competitive player. And then Call of Duty 2 came out, and that really like got a lot of my attention, and I played that basically every day, all day after school. Put many hours into that. Played for the national team of Denmark on clan base. There's the Nations Cup, as you know it. That was always made by clan base. Played for that both in Call of Duty 1, 2, and also Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Call of Duty 4, as some call it.
Yeah.
So very much a Call of Duty guy until Call of Duty 4. And obviously played all expansions and vanilla also back when it was popular, rated in
World of Warcraft. Yeah.
World of Warcraft rated basically all tiers except for Naxxramas in vanilla. So that took a lot of time. But yeah, a gamer by heart.
That is great. So how did you get into PUBG?
So PUBG was kind of I followed it for some time before it like got released, and I didn't play the beta, I didn't play the alpha, but I really kept my eye on it since like when it came out, and then the launch hit, and it was just like exactly that game that like kind of combined, what I love from Call of Duty to some of the like RNG parts and looting parts that is in World of Warcraft, and then just put it down into like a hectic game in 30 to 40 minutes where you battle to be the best in that game. And I just loved every single part of it. And at that point, I was working full-time in a software company. And I spent, I would say, as much time working as I did playing the game while I was still working full-time for that company. So I was grinding a lot. I played a lot with my friends. And when they quit or when they had to go to school or when they had to go to bed, I continued into 1, 2 at the night and just cut my sleep and slept for less and just accepted 4 hours of sleep was enough for the first couple of months.
Committed.
You're very committed.
Yeah. So you started from beta maybe or alpha? Or?
No, I bought it when it came in early access. Just when it hit Steam the first time in early access. I wasn't one of the lucky ones to get alpha or beta, and I didn't really want to put that much time into it because I like when it just comes out and then you start the grind. It's kind of like when like a fresh server wipes and someone else. Wow, Classic is around the corner. I'm gonna play that a lot as well, and it's like when a new game hits and it just leaderboards are fresh and you compete where everybody's kind of at the same level. That's what I really love.
Yeah, exactly. That is always exciting.
Yeah.
So that was about maybe what, March 2017 when you
Yeah,
started.
I believe that was when early access got
Okay,
released on Steam.
so
That was in March. Yeah.
you were playing a lot. You were basically a pro player at the start. So how
Not being
did?
signed though. Not
Okay,
being signed the
well,
first not the first 4 or 5 months. Yeah.
yeah, but not that many players were under pro teams back then. So
Yeah, that's true. So like I guess I was a very competitive player at that point, right?
yeah, so you played on Gamescom in
Yeah,
2017, which was the first official LAN tournament in
that's true.
PUBG,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
was also one of the most viewed events I think in PUBG's history.
It was one of the top 5 ones, I believe, at least. Especially also because obviously the way they structured it, it was the first kind of event. There was a lot of content creators, and especially for Twitch and especially for viewership in Twitch, the early people that are really good at PUBG, they got a lot of viewers. So there's a lot of content creators from around the world that got invited directly. I wasn't fortunate to. I didn't stream at that point that much, um, but there was a duo first person tournament. At this point, the vast majority was in third person, and they didn't release the first person until kind of later. So there was multiple tournaments. If you were one of the top if you're one of the top on the leaderboards, in the in-game leaderboards, where kind of at
Mm-hmm.
the time where it mattered a lot, and MMR was it was kind of a thing, but you still had to put in a lot of hours. You got invited by ESL if you registered to be invited. So you were kind of qualified for the event to play on the event, but you could only play in the duo third person and in the duo first person. And I found together with a mate I met through PUBG, actually, Pony Rider at that time, and we started playing a lot of duo. And we were both top 25. I think both at the point we have been both top 10, and we got invited to participate in the kind of the 4 rounds that you could play in third person and first person in duo.
Mm-hmm.
So we went on a road trip from Denmark, from Copenhagen, and I picked up Pony a bit in Jutland. We met there, and then we drove to Cologne, and then we played, obviously. But the hard thing was that there was 4 rounds, but you had to win a round. So, and on top of that, there was half of the teams that was there was kind of walk-ins, as you can say, that just walked in from in the booth and started playing there on
Mm-hmm.
some of the equipment that there. So it was very random. It was very much just like a very stacked public game. So in the third person, we didn't manage to qualify. We had a few kind of close games, and then the next day it was duo first person, where we managed to qualify in the second game, which then made us qualify to the main event of the duo first person tournament, where there was 30,000 for the first prize and 20 for the second, and so forth.
Yeah, there was a lot of
Uh,
prize money, especially for the first LAN tournament. It was also so many big names there. It was
yeah.
probably pretty intimidating to play against everyone that you watch on Twitch.
So
As
obviously it was big. It was big content creator names, and like kind of you respect them. Obviously, you see how they play, but kind of the play style and how you played in first person, that was not like a lot from them. Obviously, they played other
right,
shooters and
right.
stuff like that, but I felt like we had a kind of at an upper hand because we've been grinding so much first person, and the other guys, they had a squad tournament and a solo tournament, so they were kind of
Yeah,
focusing
yeah,
on
yeah.
the third person part of it. But it was cool. I mean, Ninja was there, and his squad won the third
Yeah,
person, and
Luminosity Gaming, if I remember, right?
yeah, true. TSM was there, Liquid was there. There's a lot of big orgs that picked up teams that are kind of put together by both big content creators, but also very good players at that point.
Yes, and talking about Ninja, Ninja wasn't Ninja of today, the
No,
Fortnite multi-millionaire
megastar.
ninja. He was very
Yeah,
popular. He had a couple of thousand viewers, maybe even more,
yeah,
but he
yeah. It was
wasn't
between 2 and 5
planetary
or so.
popular at that point. He was just
No,
another streamer, another good player, and he led his team well, and they did well.
yeah, and obviously they played extremely well together. The 3 other guys he played with was also very competitive H1C1 players, and have played like a lot
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
of games throughout their career professionally as well. So obviously they had a lot of experience together. But yeah, he at that point I think he was between 2,000 and 5,000 viewers, and not as family friendly as he is today. I actually like that. I like that ninja more. He was kind
More
of,
natural.
yeah, more natural. He flamed his opponents more, and there was a lot of more kind of speed and aggressivity, like aggression over his playstyle. And yeah, I like that ninja. I think he was very entertaining to watch as well. So obviously, it was pretty cool to meet him, shake his hand, say hi to him, and all the other guys that I've met there that are now I consider friends that I've been playing with afterwards, and most of them or many of them are now still content creators, big content creators, and also obviously some of them are still professional players.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see where these people are today. The ones that played on Gamescom. There's so many streamers that are really big now that weren't that big at that
Yeah,
point. Some people transitioned to other games. Some people became casters. Some people
yeah.
became there's very interesting career paths all over the place when it comes to the early PUBG streamers slash players.
That's true. I mean, the first kind of obviously a lot of them are not in, but there's many kind of career paths has led to that. Hayes was there. He's now been an analyst and a coach. Scoom is there,
Yes.
probably the current still most successful player. Ibiza was there, but he didn't qualify in the tournament that like in the qualifying stage of the
Hmm.
duos. But it was super interesting. It was super nice to meet all of the guys and make some friends for life.
Yeah. So how did you do in that tournament in the end?
We ended up being a little bit lucky and also kind of take advantage of some of the play styles that were there. We ended up taking two second places out of the three games that were there, so we ended up on an overall second.
And that was
Uh,
second? One would expect that would be first.
because first of all, some of the other guys they obviously won, and so the point structures was different. But I got second alone, where I was snaking in a game in the Gatka fields,
I
north of
remember that
Gatka
game. I
fields.
still remember that game.
Yeah, and it was kind of I was a bit lucky with the circus, but on top of that, I got some kills. I kind of swept the whole area, and like I was sweating so much in my hands because I usually have quite long hands, and it was extremely hot in the booth. And it was summer, so like my hands were so wet and my mouse was slippery. So I had to, while I was just like kind of saving a bush, I had to take I had like a cloth piece with me, dry my hands, and at that point the camera and everything was like on me. So Sims and Pansy, they were casting that game. Sims just started laughing and we've
Must
talked
have looked
about that.
funny, yeah.
Yeah, well, it must look funny. Like I was in a kind of a top five situation. I was just chilling and drying my hands, but I was nervous. There's a lot of pressure on. Like you want to do good,
Yeah.
but I ended up getting second that game. And then the next game, we were in a two versus one situation, and Andy Pyro, who was sitting next to me, who obviously also now know very well now, he clutched it like he played with Forsen at that time.
Wow, we played with Forsen, right?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, he played with Forsen, and he clutched that game and won the game where we got second. If we would have won that game and won the two versus one, we would have won the overall tournament. But he clutched it, and therefore he got third and got in the top three, obviously, which is extremely happy for. But yeah, we got two second places out of the three games. The other one, I believe, was the 20th place or something like that, and got second overall. And obviously, before Gamescom, I didn't even talk about this. Obviously, before Gamescom, we were lucky enough to take on an organization, a smaller Danish one, where I know some of the guys that are extremely nice there. They took us on, offered salary, the support to go down there. Obviously, Copenhagen Flames. So we were happy enough to be able to both represent them, and I think this day it is actually it's still the biggest kind of amount of prize pool in one tournament that they've won. So that's also kind of funny. So we have a special place in their heart still.
Yeah, that's really cool. You won $20,000, right?
Yeah, $20,000 to share between me and Pony, and obviously a cut for the org.
I see. So nowadays, the professional players have their own groups, Discord servers where they assemble practice sessions and play against each other every day, and that is their main practice that they get. But how
Yeah.
did it work back in 2017 while the game was still fresh? How did it start? Who started it?
So there is obviously multiple discords that kind of got started, which is super nice too, where people decided to come together and play pubs together in a try-hard mode, where you said I'm a top 100 player and like I want to play, but very quickly after Gamescom and like during Gamescom, there has been some online platforms that's been kind of trying to organize some tournaments. PUBG Online was one of them, or some of the other ones, and GLL came in later to do these tournaments that are like playing together, obviously. And so you want to have more of a scrim setup. So after Gamescom, I quickly got involved with kind of the main European one, which also had all the signed teams and all the teams that are already competing in like the top divisions and stuff like that. And at that point, like nobody was playing for money. There was no money involved. I think the biggest prize pool that people won outside in the LAN tournaments online, which wasn't like a big sponsored thing, was like keyboards and stuff like that. So the first half year, excluding Gamescom and obviously IEM Oakland, there was no prize pool. People were just grinding because they enjoyed the game. They're extremely passionate. So people wanted some proper training. And obviously the Scrim Discord had been founded at that point by some of the former Kingwin members and G-Core, which eventually turned into Face Clan. So they were kind of the boundaries of that, and I got involved with that. I think it was a fantastic project, and obviously I wanted to help out as much as I could at that point. And we started doing scrims every night, actually, from 7 o'clock, 4 or 5 games a day, with 16 to 20 teams, depending on what was the standard at that point. Obviously, in the beginning there hadn't been a defined competitive rule set, so that's also something we started discussing in there. And luckily enough, with a lot of time put in from Yannick, for example, and Miniman and myself, with kind of testing how the current circles were, we tried to come up with a competitive rule set that we started playing and tried to push to these online tournament organizers. And kind of the competitive rule set became the standard, and we were extremely lucky to have kind of the tournament organizers support some of the top teams that have been playing in the division and just accept, or you know what, these guys have spent like 100 hours of trying to make a competitive rule set, and they just adapted that extremely quickly, which actually became the standard for also IEM Oakland, where we played that rule set as well.
But even today, we can see the remnants of you guys defining what the rule set's going to be. What they're using today in almost every PUBG tournament in the world started from rules from your Scrim server, right?
So yeah, like the idea of having the standard competitive rule set was also that we wanted to kind of try to have something that was as competitive as possible, because obviously PUBG can be very RNG heavy because of the circles. Like so some of the circles that we had before this was like a 50% shrink or a 0.5 shrink, which removed 66% or more of the playable area per circle. So we tried to kind of define it more and tried to make it more competitive, and made sure that the circle shrinks were bigger, so there was more time to play inside, that you didn't have to just like try to send it with a car and try to survive, that you could actually play and you could push compounds on foot, and you could play in a much more kind of competitive integrity heavy game than just a RNG game.
Yeah.
And people enjoyed that, and I think obviously the standard, as I said today, we were lucky enough to also be involved from PUBG Corp itself. They contacted and asked us, "This is a great idea. How can we kind of help? What's your ideas?" And try to take some from that. And then we continued to develop it. Competitive rule set version 1, 2, and 3, and 3 kind of became the standard until PUBG Corp had the super settings designed, which some of us from the Scrim Discords and some of the other Discords and communities around the world obviously had their say in, and they gave their input. And obviously now we're playing on a global unified standard, the super rule set. And I think that was our goal to begin with, or it was our goal to begin with, to kind of push a global rule set, but also the way that PUBG can become the most competitive way and game possible, to have the best team be able to be the best teams and consistently be the best teams, because you don't want to play just a BO1 with public settings, because then over time, like, because there's 8 circles, there is some RNG involved, then it's not always the best teams that will kind of prevail.
Yes, but PUBG Corp has always pushed more towards the PUBG experience in the competitive games, let's say, where RNG is still a big factor, and I feel like it's extremely hard to balance in between keeping the battle royale genre idea in competitive games and also have as much as a fair match as you can. But I guess it's somewhere in between now, almost perfect for the maps like Erangel and Miramar. But for Sanhok, I don't know how that's going to work. But I guess we're going to see. And it's a topic for another podcast. Would you agree, right?
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, obviously, as you said, it's still an RNG kind of not based game, but it's a RNG influenced game. So obviously that's also one of the reasons that there are 96 games are played in a phase for a pro league in Europe, for example, less games in other regions, but hopefully that's going to be unified and a standard for all leagues across all the pro leagues in the future. But with 96 games, we saw in PL, the PL Pro League for Europe in phase 2, we saw 4 teams that are just like 100 points plus ahead, 10-15% more points than the other teams that were not even close to being in the top 4, because they were just better teams. And that to me says that, okay, we've actually reached a point where settings, where the amount of games that we play are defining, like, they're good enough. We've removed like a substantial amount of RNG, but it's still a survival game. It's still influenced by how good the players are, and the top teams, they are the top teams.
All right. Now tell me about one of my favorite projects in PUBG ever that you were one of the founders of, hotdrop.gg. How did you guys come to that idea, and how did it all start?
So hotdrop.gg was a brainchild I got in October 2017, where I was like, so PUBG's been out for 9 months, or nearly 9 months, at least a half year, and the top players, they're not playing against each other, and it's not a stacked lobby. It's still public games. Sometimes you meet the other players, but at that point, like, the game had more than 1 million active users a day, and it was rare that you outside scrims would meet pro players. So I thought, you know what? What if you could do or make a lobby where you randomize teams, and then you get a random team of 4 players playing against each other on the competitive rule set, and then you only invite the top players, which I was fortunate enough to be obviously involved from scrims. I was still playing actively myself. I had just been the analyst at IEM Oakland 2017, the kind of the first competitive first person tournament where it's only first person. There's 20 teams at that point, and after that the competitive rules got down to 16, and I wanted to offer the kind of that as a service. And I just still, like, I started contacting some of my guys. Obviously, I was working in a software company. I have a pretty good insight of how software works, and I contacted one of my associates, or a guy I know that I know could code this pretty easily, because he's very, very good at coding backend stuff, and he could also do something kind of smooth for the front end. And at that point, he made that pretty quickly, kind of the first idea of how it could work, and we kind of worked through it for 3 months, and then in I can't remember, was it March? No, it's January, maybe January or February, I think, where we had the first kind of the first public test where people could sign up and stream it and everything, and where we kind of announced it. We had a Twitter and stuff like that, and like on that day, it just blew up. Like, I got 150 direct messages across on Twitter and on Discord, like, I want to get in. But at that point, we were invite only. Like, I only wanted the absolute top to play it, and it was only people with competitive experience that have played in one of the divisions of some of the top teams or at LAN that could play. and like it just blew up, and it was so hype, and it was so cool to see kind of this idea got into development. We got developed, and then we started testing it, and there was so much more stuff I wanted to do with it. And obviously, I was the first one to have made this project, and I think it just hit the perfect timing. Like it was where PUBG was its absolute max, where it was the most popular. It was before any other title, like Battle Royale titles, really started kind of competing with it. I think it was more than 2.5 million active players at that point.
We're talking about start of 2018, right?
Correct. Yeah. And like I had put in like a substantial amount of money in development out of my own pocket, and at that point I'd also stopped working at my own, like my old job, and I decided, like, no matter what, you know what, I have some money saved. I'm gonna try to go all in on that. And obviously I'd been contacted to do IEM Katowice, which was the second ESL tournament, to be asked to be analyst there. And at that point, I decided, you know what, I want to kind of dedicate my knowledge and my experience as a player and try to help out and try to learn and teach others that don't know as much as I do, and give them the same experience that I have had so much joy of. So I decided to go full time as an analyst and potentially a caster, and on the Hot Drop GG project. And I continued the development and like continued paying this guy to, get leaderboards, get different stuff, and we had a new season every month. And the first month was just extremely active, because I think there's two parts of it. People enjoyed playing against like 60 other players that they actually knew or heard of, and the lobby was as competitive or maybe even more competitive than when we were playing scrims, because scrims were becoming kind of, there was no, you couldn't win anything in scrims. Here there was a leaderboard, you showed that you had better stats and everything, and I continued developing that on the version 1, and then like after we opened up to more players that could apply and could get in, and we opened up a bit more, we accepted taking donations to kind of try to propel the project even further into version 2. And I contacted a development agency in Copenhagen, where I knew one guy that was like, he was just a guy, because I wanted this to become really big. And we started developing, and I took all the money that got donated and put another $5,000 out of my own pocket into the project to develop like one big competitive PUBG site with everything on one place. Automatic hosting, everything that we haven't had from PUBG itself in terms of that you want a competitive experience. And I wanted to put that on one side, because right now everything was still manual. We were hosting the servers manual. We had all the players, all the content creators that had custom access, and all the pro players that had custom access because of scrims. Those guys were hosting the servers from an admin panel that we also got, like I also got developed on the same version 1 side. And then we started developing version 2, and I already put half of the money into that project, like front off, without they even showed one thing, and they started developing it. And then I started getting contacted by like investors. Some of the other platforms contacted me, and then obviously Faceit contacted me as well.
So Faceit is one of the biggest sites in this space. They make similar projects for other games. They're most famous for their Counter-Strike leagues and hubs and everything else. So how did that work with Faceit?
So obviously Faceit contacted me and asked me if I wanted to be kind of an organizer on their page, because they were already working with PUBG, like fully automating everything. And I was like, like an organizer, no, I just had investors contact me, and I wanted to like put in hundred thousands of dollars into blowing this project up and becoming, probably, I would say it would become a Faceit competitor. But like I had a big vision. I wanted to be able to make a competitive platform for every game that didn't have one already. And I wanted to do it like out of the box and like start it immediately. I wanted to have everything be API first. I wanted to be the like very, very slick experience and make it the best kind of platform and easiest platform you can do. And first off, Faceit contacted me and said, you know what, we and at this point, I had hired Miniment on kind of like on a part time, where he was still a manager. I hired him part time, working kind of making sure that all operations at Hot Drop, making sure that all our hosts and everything, like they were active, and making sure we had 10,000 people plus on the Discord server, and
You were doing everything manually back in
we were
the
doing
day,
everything
right?
manually, and he was helping, like making sure that we could do everything like operations wise, and come with good ideas, and like just support me in most of the ways. And with that, and him being able to be the manager and working for that, and I could pay him a little money out of my own pocket, was enough for him to be able to also quit his job.
Wow,
Um,
that's actually amazing when you
yeah,
look at it at that point in time as well.
yeah, it's true. And obviously, then Faceit contacted me, and I was like, "An organizer on your page sounds like a downgrade compared to what we were like the vision that I had." And I told them like what vision and what idea I had, and like what I wanted to do with it, and they told me, "You know what? It's not me you need to talk to." And I was like, "Okay, all right," because I was talking to one of the partnership managers and kind of one of the guys that tries to get in. So what Faceit does obviously is from new games and games they support, they want to get organizers on their site. So the whole idea of Faceit and all the kind of support that we can give in terms of Faceit points, in terms of automated servers, all this stuff is something that we want to like offer organizers, so they can organize, grassroots tournaments, they can organize whatever they want to do, and then with support of Faceit, without Faceit kind of taking over the organization. You still own the organization, you still own the tournaments and everything yourself, and you call it what you do. And I said, you know what, I don't think that's the plan. I want this to be really, really big. And I told them kind of my visions and stuff. And this guy, he said, you know what, I think you need to talk to my boss. And then one of the founders reached out to me, and he's still kind of head of the new projects business and market stuff. And he said to me, you know what, this is a pretty good idea and some pretty good stuff you're running already. This might be kind of too big, but if you can kind of keep quiet, I don't think I had an NDA at that point. If you can keep quiet of what we're working on, then I'll show you what we're working on, and maybe you can kind of help us do more with that, right, like what they were doing already. And at that point, they had already been working on fully automating the competitive experience, like from Counter-Strike. So obviously, Faceit, there's more than 10 million users on Faceit. They have a lot of games, mostly popular, as you said, from Counter-Strike. Well, they have like 10 more games, 15 more games than that, where it's like a competitive environment and everything. So it was just the idea that I had, but I wanted to make it smoother and easierly, kind of that you can integrate it easily and everything. And then they started telling me of kind of the plans they had, what they were doing with PUBG, and like how much time they have invested so far into the PUBG experience. And like we're talking 30 developers plus that's been working on it for months. And I was like, okay, I might be in over my head here, but this guy was really selling the idea of that I might be able to contribute with something, with the knowledge I had, and also Miniment. And it ended up in them offering us full-time positions with them, both me and Miniment. I'm working remote for them currently, and Miniment actually moved to London and is working full-time with them, both on PUBG, but also other projects that he thinks is interesting, and also for bringing in new partners and obviously growing PUBG as a whole. And we only, to begin with, we only opened in Europe and North America, and now we have like a lot more regions. We have Southeast Asia. We also have Oceania and Latin America, and many regions are kind of included. And we want to grow that. There's so many opportunities, and we want to make that even bigger.
All right, so that is one great story. How you guys turned your passion, let's say, and also your investment turned into a full-time job and one of the biggest platforms in the space.
Yeah, it's true. It's been an insane journey so far, and to think that it's only 2.5 years since I like opened the game and started playing my first game, and now I'm 2,300 hours plus of playtime into the game, and thousands more of kind of analyst hours and observing hours and commenting and everything. It's kind of insane to think that it's only been 2.5 years, and we've come so far from just being passionate guys about the game that want to do the best for the game possible, into being able to contribute more and kind of tell the broader story and the bigger story of the players that we know so well and we love to see because they're extremely skilled and we like to tell their stories. So
Yeah.
that's I'm extremely grateful for that, of course.
So one of the bigger questions for new players coming into PUBG, and especially the ones that want to get into the pro scene, is how do I get into the pro scene? Like, what do I have to do to get noticed? Who do I have to talk to? What are your main tips for aspiring players that want to be professional players in PUBG?
So obviously there's kind of two parts to it. Right now there's no direct connection between, if you do really well on the leaderboard, you don't really get noticed. Like people in the pro scene, they don't look after kind of the leaderboard players that are playing a lot of leaderboard anymore. They either look on Faceit, for example, and look at how players are doing there, or people that are streaming that kind of go viral. One of the kind of the big young talents that are not 18 yet. You have to be 18 to obviously compete in competitive PUBG. He's 16 and a half, I think. And he's just been continuing grinding. He's been playing leaderboard, been playing a lot of Faceit, and been streaming meanwhile. And kind of blew up, and like his mechanical skill is just, he's probably in terms of mechanical skill only, I think he must be like a top 10 player in the world. He's absolutely insane, Silers. And for that, from where he started, he just played the game like a lot of hours, obviously, but started playing competitively on Faceit, and tried playing out in scrims, like signed up for scrims on some of the different scrims you can apply, obviously, to get into our scrims if you're very serious. But then the most important is you can sign up to the open structure. There's a very open format. The ecosystem of PUBG is very open. So you can sign up with 3 players playing in the open league in all regions and the whole world. And then you can work your way up. First in open, then in the next phase, if you do well in open, you can qualify to play in the relegation tournaments for the contenders leagues, where there's a prize pool as well. You probably won't be able to live full time off that. You probably have to kind of subsidize with another income, either streaming or working part time somewhere else. And then there's a relegation tournament from the contenders teams, where it's the top in Europe. It's the top 12 teams from the 32 contender teams that play against the bottom 4 teams in the PL, which is the highest league, obviously, and play for the 4 spots that are kind of available. So it was 16 teams. They play 20 games, and the top 4 will earn their way into the Pro League in Europe, where there's $350,000 for prize pool in phase 2 and also in phase 3.
Basically, you have to play a lot and you have to show yourself, but probably the best place to show yourself is Faceit. Just being really good in Faceit and trying to connect, network with the pros playing there, because there's a lot of pros just queuing up alone and just play with random people. It's good for them too to maybe spot someone. Hey, this guy is really good, and we just need a new 4th player. So maybe you get a chance like that. You show yourself in a good light, and you get picked up.
And I would say, like, in terms of community, the PUBG community is extremely mature. Like the majority of the players are kind of older, experienced. They've either played a lot throughout their career, like I've done. We have some players that have played professionally in other games, in Dota 2 and League of Legends, and other shooters that are now professional in PUBG. So the kind of scene is very mature, and like it's extremely welcoming. And that's what I've experienced, and that's what I'm trying to kind of promote and do myself as well. It's extremely welcoming to new players. We try to kind of welcome and embrace new players. As I said, Silas was one of them. Like, he got spotted. I can't even remember. Like, he kind of got spotted and he got shared in the Discord and the media channel, and instantly you have like 500 people that are looking at this guy that is just doing, insane mechanical skill, like a 1v3 or whatever, and like instantly he's recognized, and like he will have a bright future if you do something like that. And obviously, as you said, networking is really, really important. Number 2, stream if you're able to do that, because you're able to kind of show your skill off and and show yourself kind of proof that you're not cheating, maybe, if people are kind of doubting that. But also that will create kind of clips, and it'll maybe make you rival. And at that point, you will have people contacting you, asking you, you know what, you're insane. Do you want to play with me? I have this experience. And that was, for example, Silas. He experienced. He played with Yannick, former player of Rogue, played in Vitality to make an open team. And Yannick then qualified with Silas from opens into contenders. Then, unfortunately, Silas, who is not 18, could not continue with him into the contenders team. But he's gotten an immense amount of exposure just from being a very good player and streaming some of his insane skills.
All right. Now let's go back a little bit, and let's
Yeah.
talk about your other career, casting or being an analyst.
Yes.
So tell us about your first casting gig. How did that go?
Very nervous. So the first, unfortunately, I didn't qualify for it myself, but it was IEM Oakland 2017. I had the pleasure of still being an active player at that point. We actually did extremely well at that point. Awesome was both North America and Europe in the same league. We were top 5 at that point. We were very close. We even got contacted by a few orgs, but unfortunately, we didn't get invited directly. I was kind of sad about that. But then I got contacted by some of the guys from PUBG Corp and ESL, and they were like, you know what? Do you want to come and be an analyst on the tournament over in Oakland? And I was like, yeah, that sounds amazing. I would like to be a part of it, because, as I said before, like, I kind of early found out that I have a kind of a passion of being able to tell some stories, being able to tell some storylines. And I was playing. I've been playing against and with these guys that are on LAN for months. I knew everything about them. I was like, I love stats, and I love kind of the stories about people. I love talking to new people, and I was just happy to be able to kind of be able to be that. But it was IEM Oakland 2017. My co-analyst was Steel, now a pro player for Ghost and Counter-Strike. He played a lot of PUBG. PUBG was obviously extremely popular, but he played a lot of PUBG, but not on a competitive level. So he was more kind of the casual analyst, where he had some terms from that, but he was extremely competitive himself from Counter-Strike. So he had kind of that view of how, like, the competitive environment can affect you. And then the desk host was James Kylaris, which I've been then having the pleasure of working with a lot of times afterwards, and also been working with him in PL. So yeah, it was an exciting tournament. They used the rule set set by PUBG Corp. That one was set by PUBG Corp, if I recall correctly. I don't think they were using our rule set, because they were playing 20 teams in different circles. And yeah, so I'm quite sure that they didn't have that. It was the next one that had it.
So from there on, you casted probably like 20, 30 tournaments or something like that. I don't know the exact number, but you've been on almost every big tournament since then, at least the EU ones. How do you like being how do you like being a caster and an analyst as a career?
Well, so obviously, I love being able to travel for a living, and talking about a game that I love. But yeah, as you said, like, it's been a lot of tournaments. I've been fortunate enough to. I think it was also about timing. Like, I was one of the best analysts, not one of the best, one of the first analysts that stepped out from have been playing professionally, and being kind of recognized as a player where I want some money at Gamescom and playing in the online leagues, and then stepping out and taking kind of this other career path. And I think one of the things that it created was kind of validity. Like, it made sure that the scene was like, okay, this guy actually knows what he's talking about. I know about very high end terms, in terms of like rotations, how people think, what do you need to do, how do you counter stuff that happens. And being able to work with both Steele and James, that are a lot more experienced than me, they were able to kind of extrapolate some of the information that I had. And we had a kind of a short segment where we were talking about some of the ideas, and like how how to approach some of the game styles, and then we had some experienced casters that were able to break down the games live, obviously. So it was a very nervous. I was nervous on that, and I think I don't talk as much as I did today, but I just wanted to do I wanted to represent the community well, because I was kind of the first community representative that's been stepping out from player to going into kind of more in a broadcast role, you know.
Yeah, but do you think that your strongest attribute when it comes to being an analyst is that you know everyone, you know how everyone thinks, you know how everyone plays? You played with almost everyone in that game. Do you think that that is very important?
I think obviously it's a part of it, but I think like afterwards I put in so many hours, and prior to that, like I watched so much competitive PUBG that it's kind of incorporated of how it is. And obviously I played it competitively. I know the maps extremely well, but there's a lot of, I think, me being able to not do everything with kind of, you look at the map, you see what happens, and you say something, but that's hindsight thinking. And I tried to put myself in a position of, if I was this player, with the information that was available to the player, is this the best decision? And that's how I try to analyze it. That's how I'm trying to break it down. And as I got more experience, as I put more time into watching more games and working more, you obviously get more experience, and you can just say, okay, this is a bad decision, and then you can get challenges. Why is that? Well, he was in this position. He could see this house. He could have scouted that. Instead of going straight into the compound, he could have stopped on this hill, which was available. He knew that. And based off that, I think it creates kind of authenticity in terms of, this guy knows what he's talking about, and it's not just a guy saying stuff just to say stuff, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think what I really wanted to do, I wanted to represent the community well. I wanted the players and my co-casters, I wanted them to look at me and say, you know what, you've been playing on a high level. You know what goes through your head at this point. Why did they do this, or how did they feel? And I want to try to give that picture that I think that the players, and obviously I talk a lot with them, I play with them, I try to play with them a lot, and I enjoy playing with them. And when they're not playing, I talk with them, I spend time with them, because they're friends. I've been spending so much time with them at this point. So I try to give that perspective until both viewers and kind of fans try to tell their story, try to say and kind of tell how they feel and why they're doing these decisions, you know. And I
Yeah.
think that's why, and I think that's one of the reasons why I've been getting some jobs. And obviously, as I said, I've done a lot. I've been very fortunate to work with almost all the tournament organizers throughout the times, both casting, but mainly as an analyst, which I really, really enjoy, especially working with some of the guys that I've been working with recently as well. It's extremely awesome to see some other guys also be able to transition from a player into a role where you actually see them develop and shine and really be able to tell stories that you feel like it's the good story, and it's the true story, and it's accurate information. And I think accurate information is also like a big thing. You need to be able to say things about the players, about their play styles, about their decisions that are both true, but also can kind of question mark, why did they do this? Could they have done this better?
I think that it's a big thing that players respect what you have to say, and when you say someone made a mistake, that he probably did make a mistake. I don't think a lot of people can say stuff that other players are gonna respect the pro players, what is said about them, for example, because there's not that many people that have that knowledge that is required to be sure in something like Liquid shouldn't have done that, because those guys are really good at the game, and maybe you don't know a piece of info that they do and why they made certain decisions. So I think that's a big thing when it comes to you as an analyst and as a caster. When we're talking about casting, do you prefer being an analyst or being a caster?
Well, I really love both of the sides, but like as I'm doing right now, one of the reasons why I loved casting so much was because I obviously work with some extremely talented people that are kind of, the roles are very set. I'm a color caster. I tell the stories. I give the information. I kind of fill the time between action,
Yeah.
And then you work with people like with D-Man, with Pansy, with Sims. With I had the pleasure of working with Avnqrs a few times as well. And these guys are so good at breaking down action and like bring a really good story across. And then if I can fill with like extremely accurate and being very, very knowledgeable about some of the subjects that happens in game, because I have that amount of times, like time put into the game, both playtime, but then the thousands of hours on top of that I've been watching the games. I think that flavor is kind of appealing to a lot of people. I love listening to Pansy and Sims. They're such a good casting pair. But I think some players and some viewers, they really love to have like a very hard color caster like myself, a former player, or someone like Frost, and then a 100% dedicated play-by-play caster. And I think that's what it kind of I like, being able to tell the stories live as well, rather than going to the analyst desk where it can be, and it kind of has to be on a more kind of professional and factual setting, rather than when you tell the stories live.
Yeah.
But I back to your actual question. I really enjoy both of it, but I think I'm most comfortable in my role as an analyst.
I see.
Even though as an analyst is 5 times the amount of work.
Because you have to prepare all the segments they're going to do.
Obviously, when you're casting, you're working when you cast. But when you're an analyst, you watch the game while it's being casted, and you have to look for all the information and try to gather information to build the story and the stories that you want to tell. And on top of that, you have to note both like in your brain, but also even maybe physical sometimes, depending on how you work, what the players are doing, what the teams are doing, why they did that, question that, and then put that together in a segment that can vary from 8 minutes and sometimes up to 50 minutes, depending on if there's technical issues, because very often it's the analyst desk that is filling for time post game and pre game, obviously. So there's so much preparation and so much time, and I really enjoy that. I love being knowing so much about the teams, because especially if I'm with some of the guys that I worked with recently, you can just have you can literally talk for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, because there's so many subjects.
So you don't have issues with trying to find content to talk about?
No, but also it can also be tiring for the viewers, because the viewers, they're there to watch the games, obviously. So we try to keep the segments as short as possible, but also within reasonable respect of that the players are actually playing for 4 hours in a row. So they also need to go to the toilet, get a snack to make sure that their blood levels are fine, get a drink. We need to respect that they also need to have a 10-15 minute break, sometimes maybe even 20 minutes break between the games, so they can actually stay hydrated and make sure that they're comfortable playing. And we obviously fill that gap, and I really enjoy that. And I think we haven't even reached the levels of what we're able to do in terms of stats, in terms of what stories we can tell, what we can show, because there's so many possibilities with 16 teams. It's 64 players in every single game, and there's so many things to extrapolate from every single game.
Yes, indeed. You recently had the opportunity to cast PUBG Mobile. So
Yeah,
what do you think of PUBG Mobile in general, and casting it and seeing the esports scene?
I didn't cast it though. I was an analyst as well.
I mean, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think I was surprised of how insane these guys are with their fingers. And when I'm saying fingers, we're talking 2 and 3 fingers on a screen that is 5, 6 inches, 7 inches. I don't know how big they are anymore. And they're just doing insane stuff. Yes, I know that there's some sort of aim assist, but I try to play this game myself with all the knowledge I have in strategy, movement, rotations, everything that you can also apply to PUBG Mobile. And I realized after about 50 hours in the game that, okay, these guys, they are just on another level. Like some of these guys, they're playing with 4 fingers and 3 fingers and 2 fingers. And they're doing, when you watch them play, they're just the movement, the way they jiggle peek, the way they jump, shoot, their rotations, they're just insane. So I'm extremely happy to be able to kind of also be part of that and maybe step into that a little bit, because I think a lot of the knowledge that I've gained through my time, I can adjust that and apply that knowledge and kind of share that as well with the PUBG Mobile community, maybe.
But when it comes to strategies, what do you think is the main difference between the top level play of PUBG Mobile versus PUBG?
I think there's multiple things to it. So the strategy can very much be the same, but the most important thing in terms of a strategy and overall is adapting to the meta. So in PUBG PC, if you have a lot of teams that center up, it might be viable to play more edge in the first couple of circles. If you have a lot of teams that are edging, you need to be able to kind of from second circle on, you need to be able to rotate and take a compound and play a bit more center heavy, because then when the circles become smaller, there will be the density of players on the edge will be too high, and you will be killed or third partied or held outside the circle and gate kept. So being able to adapt to that is exactly the same in PUBG Mobile, obviously. And if you're able to both have your rotations on point, take compounds fast after you see the circles move away from you, because obviously the first circles are big, and you might be able to having to travel multiple kilometers, and you have to do it fast. You have to do it efficient. You have to do it together with your team. You might meet other players on the way, and especially in PUBG Mobile, if you drive together in a car, you can really pull up on compounds. It's a bit harder in PUBG PC because a lot of players they tend to shoot up and blow up the car, and they don't really do that in PUBG Mobile as much. So pulling up in PUBG Mobile is a lot more entertaining, and you see so much more kind of fighting for compounds in the center zones compared to PUBG PC, where people prefer a bit more of trying to play on foot from some positions and try to get some kills, obviously, of course, as well.
All right. Let's step away from gaming for a minute, and let's talk about your vacations in my home country of Croatia. So, how many times have you been here?
I've been there 5 or 6 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
More
than you've been to Denmark.
Yeah, definitely. So how were your vacations? What do you do in Croatia when you come here for the summer?
Well, so the first 4 or 5 years, it was actually a family trip where we took the boat, a quite big boat, and put it on the trailer, put it on the car, and took a 27-hour trip down to the Adriatic Sea.
Wow.
To fish for tuna. And that was actually the first kind of 4 or 5 years, not like back to back. It was sometimes off and on, but down to go fishing for tuna simply. And I really love fishing, and on top of that, I really love Croatia. Like, it's extremely enjoyable to be there. It's a very beautiful country, and especially kind of from the sea area as well. The water is beautiful. The whole nature is very, very beautiful there, and I really love fishing and being able to try to catch a big fish and then eat it very close to like an hour, 2 hours after you
yeah, that is amazing.
after you caught it. That is just amazing.
Yeah,
that's something kind of, you feel free in that way, you know.
Yeah. So this year you came to Ultra.
Yeah.
How did that go?
That was a very good experience. One of my or my favorite music kind of trio is Swedish House Mafia, and they've been kind of retired, or they haven't been together. But then they announced that they're coming back together again, and they're gonna go on a tour. And I've never been to Ultra. I've never been to a big festival. Yes, some, but like not in that size. And I just said, you know what, I have to do this. And I told Frost, my colleague from PL, I told him, you know what, we should do this. It actually fits in our really busy schedule. We could do this. And then we started talking about, like, okay, let's actually do it. Let's go to Croatia, let's go to Split, go down to Ultra, and then just enjoy some music, some time off, and have fun, and drink and dance. And we started talking about that, and there were like 2 other guys. They quickly said, you know what, we don't do that too. So James from Liquid and Uber from FaceClan, they ended up joining us as well, and we had a boys trip down there over the weekend, and enjoyed a lot of music and had a lot of fun, and enjoyed some just some good drinks and danced all night. It was extremely enjoyable.
That sounds great. A bunch of PUBG guys going to Croatia for Ultra.
Yeah, it was great. I guess it talks to also kind of how close the whole community is, especially in a pro scene and stuff. We're very good friends. There's like people are extremely mature. And we're having a lot of fun together, and we're just sharing this same passion for a game that we've been playing for a long time, both professionally now as pro players, but also casters and everything, and kind of our paths have crossed throughout the times. It's extremely enjoyable.
Yes, you can definitely feel that the community is very mature and very well connected and very friendly, especially on events. When you come to events and you see everyone hanging out together, especially
Yeah.
if you're a streamer that has an opportunity to hang out with the players all day long and all of that. So I've definitely felt that the community is just amazing and probably the best out there in the competitive esports world, in my opinion.
I think so too. I mean, it's very including, and we and like especially myself, like I talk to myself, like I try to be as friendly and open to everyone kind of approaching me. Like even though it's work, I really want to kind of everyone that I'm around, I want to have them having the best experience possible. So like if there's fans there, if there's viewers or anything, like you try to engage as much as possible, and also obviously trade your like treat your colleagues well, treat your player like the players that you're with well, and they will treat you well as well.
All right. I think we've covered most of the topics that we wanted to cover. We went through all kinds of stuff, so it's going to be interesting for a lot of different people to listen to what you had to say. Especially, I don't know if you did any of interviews of this type before, but I think there's a lot of really good info on how to become a pro, how things went in the history of PUBG, and maybe something like this can happen again in some other game that comes out. Who knows? All right, man. I'd like to thank you for doing this interview with me.
Yeah, but thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be your first.
Funny guy. So you can find Avnqr on Twitter at Avnqr and on twitch.tv/Avnqr. That is Avnqr. If you like this episode, feel free to subscribe to the podcast and leave an honest review. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next one.